Welcome to our fun little study group for PP 5361 Theory and Management of Public Service Organizations. These are the readings from the required text, Managing Human Behavior in Public and Nonprofit Organizations, Chapter 2.
It is good to be back.
Aha.
And looking at the syllabus for this week, we are making a pretty big pivot.
A huge pivot, yeah.
Usually talk about, the big picture stuff, organizational structures, budgets, all that macro level analysis. But today, the text is really forcing us to look in the mirror.
It really is. We are breaking down Chapter 2, Knowing and Managing Yourself. And I have to admit, when I first saw that on the reading list, I had this kind of knee-jerk reaction.
Oh, yeah.
It sounded less like a grad-level seminar on public administration and, I don't know, more like a self-help retreat.
Yeah.
I was half expecting the first page to tell me to manifest my destiny or something.
I get that. That's a fair reaction. I mean, in a field that's so obsessed with policy and metrics and data, knowing yourself can feel a little
Fluffy, exactly. But then you crack the chapter open and you realize pretty fast that the authors aren't suggesting we all hold hands and sing Kumbaya.
No, not at all.
This is actually hardcore management theory. It's just disguised as introspection. And they ground it right away with Peter Drucker.
Right. And you can't get more serious than Drucker. He's basically the godfather of modern management theory. He is not known for being, touchy-feely.
Not in the slightest. But Drucker was incredibly prescient. He saw this fundamental shift happening in the economy that just changes everything for us as individual workers.
Okay.
He pointed out that we're living in this era of declining job security, but at the same time, significantly increased longevity.
We're living longer, but our jobs are less stable.
Exactly. The math has completely changed. The days of the company man where you join, say, the Parks Department at 22, and you stay until you get the gold watch at 65, those days are just gone. That structural shift is honestly a little terrifying if you think about it too much. It means the institution isn't going to manage your career for you anymore.
That's precisely Drucker's argument. Because organizations can no longer promise you that job for life, the responsibility falls. Well, it falls entirely on you. He wrote, and this is a direct quote, "Individuals have to think hard about where their strengths lie, what they can contribute, and how they can improve their own performance. You are the CEO of your own career now."
Which puts a totally different spin on this chapter, doesn't it? It's not about feeling good for the sake of it. It's about professional survival in a really fluid workplace.
It's about survival. And it's about effectiveness. And there's this central tension that the chapter introduces that I think just hooks you immediately.
Go on.
As managers, especially in our field, public service, we spend so much time trying to control others.
Oh, absolutely. Our staff, the public narrative, the city council.
All of it. But the text highlights this point by Leanna Homer and Guy Adams that is just incredibly humbling. The only person you can actually control in any relationship is yourself.
That really was the aha moment for me in the reading. We burn so much energy trying to rewrite other people's behavior, but the only lever we can actually pull is our own.
Yes.
So with that, here's our roadmap for this deep dive. We are going to unpack what that self-control, that self-knowledge really looks like in practice. We've got a really fascinating stack of material today. We're going to start by analyzing the evolution of Jeffrey Katzenberg, a true Hollywood titan, as a case study in leadership transformation.
And we're not just looking at stories. We're going to get into you could say, the hardware of personality. Yeah. We're moving way beyond the internet quizzes to look at the Myers-Briggs and the Big Five and why they can actually predict job performance.
We'll also look at the deeper software that's running in the background, things like moral development, emotional intelligence, and the really hidden obstacle of implicit bias that can derail even the best managers.
And then we'll wrap it all up with a framework called Career Anchors, which helps explain why some promotions, the ones that look great on paper, can actually make people miserable.
It's a great lineup. So let's dive in. And I want to start with that narrative arc the text uses to frame all of this, the story of Jeffrey Katzenberg.
It's such a compelling case study because Katzenberg is a legend, the CEO of DreamWorks Animation, the guy behind Shrek, Kung Fu Panda.
Right.
But the text doesn't start there with all the success. It takes us back to the before picture, back when he was a top executive at Disney in the early 90s.
And that before picture is intense. Honestly, it's a little painful to read about. The text says he had a reputation for being a screamer and a shredder.
A shredder. I mean, just think about that word to describe a boss. It's so visceral. It implies he wasn't just critiquing the work. He was like emotionally tearing people apart.
Yeah. There's this one specific anecdote in the source material that really stuck with me. He would apparently greet an employee at 6:30 in the morning.
Which is already an insane time to be at the office.
Right, he'd see them at 6:30 a.m. and say, "Good afternoon."
Wow. That's a high-level passive aggression right there. It immediately sets a tone that says you're already behind no matter how hard you work.
And he even joked, or maybe he wasn't joking, about telling people, if you don't come to work on Saturday, don't bother showing up on Sunday.
So it paints a very clear picture of his management philosophy at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
He believed he could drive results through sheer force of will, through intimidation and just volume. He was maximizing output, no doubt, but he was doing it by absolutely grinding people into dust.
And he probably thought it was working.
He did, until the turning point.
Mm-hmm.
In 1994, he was unceremoniously fired from Disney,
The text quotes him calling it a swift kick in the butt.
which is often what it takes,
Yeah.
to shatter that kind of ego. But this is where the story gets really useful for us. He doesn't just fade away. He goes on to co-found DreamWorks. Now, most people in that situation would just double down. They'd think, Disney made a mistake. I was right all along. I'm going to do the exact same thing somewhere else. But Katzenberg, he didn't.
He changed.
He realized that his old style of leadership had a shelf life. He said something really profound in an interview. The text quotes him. He said, I started to realize that if I wanted to stay surrounded by great people, I had to get out of their way.
That is a massive shift in perspective, to go from micromanaging everyone to realizing you're the bottleneck.
He was the bottleneck.
Yeah.
Worse, he realized he was setting a pace that was biologically impossible for other human beings to sustain. By assuming everyone should work 24/7 like he did, he was just burning out his best talent. He was shortening his own career.
So what did he do? Did he just decide to be nicer?
It was more specific than that. He developed a technique, a very tactical mechanism to reprogram his own behavior. He calls it the 5-second tape delay.
I love that detail because it's so practical. It's not just some abstract philosophy.
It's a circuit breaker. That's what it is. Before he expresses an opinion, or especially before he snaps at someone, he forces himself to just wait for 5 seconds.
He self-edits.
He self-edits. It sounds so simple, but for someone with that kind of type A, high-octane drive, that pause is everything. It allows the rational brain, the prefrontal cortex, to catch up with that initial emotional impulse. It literally stops the shredder from coming out.
And the result wasn't just that people, liked him more personally.
No, this is the key insight. The text says he realized that honoring, celebrating, recognizing, and rewarding his employees, that's a business strategy.
It's not about being soft, it's about the bottom line.
Exactly. It wasn't about being nice. He realized that if people love coming to work, if they feel valued, they are more creative. They take bigger risks. They make better movies. I mean, Shrek doesn't happen if everyone on the animation team is terrified of the CEO.
So let's connect this to the bigger picture for public and nonprofit management. This shift seems even more critical in our world. The text points out that the old model was very top-down, very hierarchical.
Right, the old command and control era. That might work when you're building widgets on an assembly line where the task is repetitive.
But that's not what we do.
No. Today, public managers are being asked to do more with less. They're navigating massive ambiguity, complex social problems. You cannot order someone to be innovative. You can't command a social worker to be more resilient in a crisis. You have to lead them. And that requires the kind of self-regulation that Katzenberg had to learn the hard way.
Okay, so Katzenberg had to basically reprogram his own software. But let's shift gears and talk about the hardware, the stuff that's kind of baked into us from the start. The text spends a lot of time on personality tests.
It does.
And I feel like everyone listening has, at some point, taken a BuzzFeed quiz to see which Harry Potter house they belong to. But the text focuses on two main frameworks, Myers-Briggs and the Big Five.
We should probably start with the Myers-Briggs type inventory, the MBTI, just because it's so ubiquitous.
It really is.
You walk in to almost any major organization for a team building day, and you're going to end up with a 4-letter label pinned to your shirt. It's all based on the work of Carl Jung.
And the key thing the text really emphasizes here, which I think a lot of people forget, is that there are no right or wrong answers.
That's the fundamental premise. MBTI isn't about ability or intelligence. It's about preference. It's simply about how you prefer to process information and make decisions.
Okay.
The text uses this great little illustration to explain the difference between, say, the sensing type and the intuitive type. It's about two people looking at a house for sale.
I really like this example. It made the concepts really concrete. So you have these two people standing on the sidewalk looking at the exact same building.
Correct. The sensing type, the S, looks at the house and sees the data that is right there in front of them. They see the torn carpet in the living room. They see the peeling paint on the porch. They notice the water damage on the ceiling. They are grounded in the immediate, tangible reality of the object.
They're the ones making the punch list. This is broken. This needs fixing. That's a problem.
Exactly. But then the intuitive type, the N, looks at the same wreck of a house and sees possibilities. They don't see the torn carpet. They see a future open concept living room. They're saying, we could knock down this wall. We could put a garden over there. This place could be amazing. They are seeing the potential, not just the present data.
And the danger, I assume, is when you only have one of those types in the room when you're making a decision.
That's the management lesson right there. If you have a team of only intuitives, you buy a money pit because nobody bothered to check the foundation. You get swept up in the vision and ignore the reality. But if you have a team of only sensors, you never buy the house at all. You get so bogged down in the peeling paint that you miss the opportunity. The text says it explicitly. A thinker needs a feeler to sell the idea and build enthusiasm, and a feeler needs a thinker to analyze the flaws and stand firm against opposition.
So it's about cognitive diversity. It's recognizing that if my colleague is nitpicking every detail of my proposal, they're not necessarily being difficult. They might just be a sensor, and I probably need their perspective to make it better.
Precisely. Now, the text does include a pretty important caveat here.
Right.
While the MBTI is incredibly popular for corporate training and team building,
Right.
academic researchers, people who study this for a living, they often prefer a different model. The Big Five.
Okay, why is that? Is the MBTI flawed?
It's not so much that it's flawed, but the Big Five is considered more scientifically robust, particularly when it comes to predicting actual job performance. It breaks personality down into 5 core dimensions. You've got conscientiousness, extroversion, openness to experience, emotional stability, and agreeableness.
And they found some pretty strong correlations with how people actually do at work, right?
They have. And this is something I think every hiring manager needs to hear. The single dimension with the strongest correlation to job performance across the board, and it doesn't matter what the role is conscientiousness.
Conscientiousness. So we're talking about being dependable, organized, planning ahead.
It sounds boring, doesn't it? We all have this cultural image of wanting to hire the erratic genius or the charismatic visionary.
The big ideas person.
But the data is just crystal clear. Hire the person who makes a list and follows through. That is the best predictor of success you're going to find. But here's where it gets really interesting, especially for anyone who thinks leaders have to be the loudest person in the room.
You're talking about extroversion.
Yes. We have this cultural myth that to be a leader, you have to be an extreme extrovert. You have to be the one giving the rousing speeches. But the data shows something different.
Okay.
Extroversion is definitely helpful for highly social jobs. Think public relations, community outreach, sales. But it is not a requirement for leadership.
That's a huge relief for all the introverts out there listening.
Absolutely. The text references Susan Cain, who wrote the book Quiet. Her whole argument is that our culture often overvalues the extrovert. But introverts are often better at deep collaboration. They tend to listen more carefully. They're less likely to dominate a meeting, which allows other people's ideas to surface. In a complex public service environment, sometimes you need a listener more than a talker.
And what about openness to experience?
That's becoming more and more critical,
Right.
especially in cross-cultural environments. If you're managing a diverse team in a nonprofit or working for a global NGO, that ability to be imaginative, broad-minded, and just curious about things that are different from you, that's a huge asset. It's what drives innovation.
Okay, so that's the personality side, the hardware. But self-awareness isn't just about how I process information. It's also about what I believe. The text dives into moral development, specifically Kohlberg's model.
This is fascinating stuff because it helps explain why two people can look at the exact same ethical problem and come to completely different conclusions.
Yeah.
Lawrence Kohlberg argued that we don't all process right and wrong in the same way. We actually develop through distinct levels.
Let's break those down because I think we can all spot these in our coworkers or, maybe in ourselves.
For sure. So at the very bottom, you have the pre-conventional level. This is basically toddler morality. Your decisions are based entirely on personal needs and consequences.
What's in it for me?
Exactly. I won't cheat because I don't want to get caught and fail the class. Or I will do this because I'll get a reward. It's purely transactional.
Okay, and the next level up?
The conventional level. This is where most adults operate most of the time. It's based on rules and social expectations. I won't cheat because it's against the school's honor code. Or I won't cheat because my colleagues would lose respect for me if they found out. It's about maintaining the social order.
And what's at the top?
That's the post-conventional level.
Yeah.
And this is much, much rarer. This is where you judge right and wrong based on deeply internalized principles of justice and integrity, regardless of what the rules say or what other people think. It's, I won't cheat because it violates my own personal standard of honesty, even if there were no rule against it and you were guaranteed not to get caught.
And the text gives us that hypothetical to test this out, right?
Right.
The case of Ramon Smith, a city manager.
Right, the privatizing the cafeteria case.
Yeah.
It's a classic public administration dilemma. Ramon is looking at privatizing the City Hall cafeteria. On paper, the numbers say it saves the city a lot of money, big efficiency points.
But there's a catch.
The catch is that the current cafeteria staff are older, loyal employees. They've been there for 20, 30 years. They'll almost certainly lose their livelihoods if the contract goes to a private vendor.
So let's play this out. How does a pre-conventional manager decide this?
A pre-conventional manager looks at the budget and thinks, if I save this money, I get my performance bonus. Or maybe the city council will praise me and I'll keep my job. The decision is driven entirely by personal success or avoiding personal failure. They'd likely fire the staff to save their own skin, so to speak.
And the post-conventional manager.
The post-conventional manager really struggles with the ethical dilemma. They aren't just looking at the city ordinance or the budget sheet. They're weighing the value of fiscal efficiency against the human cost. They might say, yes, saving money is important, but we have a moral obligation to these people who have given decades of service to the city.
So they might try to find a third way.
They might look for retraining programs or early retirement packages. They do that because their internal principle of justice outweighs the simple rule of cut costs wherever possible.
It really shows that you can't just judge the final decision. You have to understand the reasoning behind it. A conventional manager might make the nice choice just because they don't want people to be mad at them.
Right, to avoid social disapproval.
Whereas a post-conventional manager does it because they believe it's the right thing to do.
Exactly. And knowing where you tend to operate on that scale is a huge part of self-management. But even with good morals, you can still fail if you don't have the next piece of the puzzle, emotional intelligence or EQ.
This is the Daniel Goleman section. And I feel like EQ is a buzzword we hear all the time. Read the room, be empathetic. But the text actually breaks it down into 4 very specific components.
Yes, and understanding the structure is really helpful because it shows how they all build on each other. Goleman divides it into 1, self-management. Can you control those disruptive impulses? That's Katzenberg's tape delay. 2, self-awareness. Do you actually know what you are feeling when you're feeling it? Which is harder than it sounds.
It really is.
Can you identify, okay, I am feeling defensive right now, and that's why I'm reacting this way?
Yeah.
Then 3 is social awareness. This is empathy, understanding organizational politics, reading the room. And finally, 4 is social skills. Can you build networks, manage relationships, and lead change effectively?
And the text makes a really strong claim here. It says that EQ is often the antecedent to resilience.
That's such a powerful line. It means that before you can be resilient, before you can bounce back from setbacks, you have to be emotionally intelligent. The research is clear. High technical skill without EQ often leads to failure.
We see this all the time, don't we? The brilliant engineer or the incredible surgeon who gets promoted to run the whole department.
And they just crash and burn.
Yeah.
Because they treat people like code or like patients, not like complex human beings. They lack the EQ to manage the messy reality of emotions. And speaking of crashing and burning, the text lists several of these self-imposed barriers to leadership that were identified by Morris, Ely, and Frey.
These are the things we do to ourselves that get in our own way.
Exactly, and they are painful to read because they are so relatable. Barrier number 1 is overemphasizing personal goals over the organization's goals. Barrier 3 is turning competitors into enemies, burning bridges you might need later.
They're all common traps.
They are. But the one that really stood out to me, and I think it will resonate with a lot of our listeners, is barrier number 6, the imposter phenomenon.
Oh, absolutely. This one hit home for me, too.
It was coined by Clance and Imes, and it's that nagging, persistent feeling that you are a fraud, that you've somehow fooled everyone into thinking you're competent, and at any moment, someone is going to walk into your office and say, hey, we checked the records, you don't actually belong here.
The text actually quotes Sheryl Sandberg on this, the COO of Facebook. She said, Women can't seem to shake the sense that it is only a matter of time until they are found out for who they really are.
And there's a distinct gender disparity noted in the text about this confidence gap. Studies show men often seek a promotion almost immediately after starting a new job. They look at the next rung on the ladder and think, yeah, I can do that.
Whereas women often feel like they need to have 100% of the qualifications before they'll even apply.
They wait until they are overqualified to even raise their hand. It's a massive, self-imposed barrier to talent development in our organizations.
That is a perfect segue into the next section, because sometimes that feeling of not belonging isn't just in your head. It can be reinforced by the environment through implicit bias.
This is such a critical distinction the text makes. We have to separate explicit bias from implicit bias. Explicit bias is conscious prejudice. It's, I don't like this group of people. And that has, thankfully, declined significantly over the last 50 years. It's not gone, but it's less overt.
But implicit bias is, it's the silent killer.
It's automatic. It's unconscious. It's your brain making these lightning-fast judgments based on stereotypes and patterns it has absorbed from the culture your whole life. You might genuinely believe you're an egalitarian person.
Right.
You might consciously fight for equality every day, but your brain is still running a background program that you aren't even aware of.
And the text gives some just startling data to prove this isn't just a feeling or some abstract theory. The orchestra study absolutely blew my mind.
Oh, that's a classic study in behavioral science. So for a long time, major symphony orchestras were almost entirely men. And the argument was always, well, men simply play better. They have more lung power for the brass instruments, or whatever justification was used.
Right.
Then some orchestras started changing the audition process. They introduced blind auditions, where the musician would play behind a screen.
So the judges could hear the music, but they couldn't see the person holding the instrument.
Correct. They even put down carpet on the stage so you couldn't hear the click of high heels. And what happened? Suddenly, the percentage of women winning jobs jumped from 25% to 46%.
That is just incredible.
Think about what that means. The talent hadn't changed overnight. The music hadn't changed. The women were always that good. The only thing that changed was removing the visual trigger for the judge's unconscious bias.
It proves that our so-called objective judgments are rarely objective at all. And it wasn't just in music. The text mentions the Brian versus Karen study.
Right, psychology professors, people who study the human mind for a living and should be aware of this stuff, were given identical application packages.
Identical.
Same skills, same experience, same fonts on the resume.
Yep.
The only difference was the name at the top. One said Brian, the other said Karen. And they preferred to hire Brian over Karen by a 2-to-1 ratio.
Even the professors. Wow.
That's the point. Nobody is immune. We all have brains that categorize to save energy. And the text brings up a very serious study about health disparities, too. It showed that healthcare providers, regardless of their own race or gender, demonstrated substantial implicit bias against Latino and African American patients.
Which moves this from not getting a job to potentially not getting life-saving treatment.
Yeah.
So what do we do? If this is all unconscious, how can we possibly fix it?
Well, the text suggests a few paths. First is individual awareness. Taking something like the IAT, the Implicit Association Test online. It's a tool to help you see your own blind spots. You can't fix what you don't acknowledge exists.
Okay.
And then on a policy level, we have to affirm equity as a core value. We have to invite dialogue and talk openly about system biases instead of pretending they don't exist. And we need to build more screens, like the orchestra did, into our hiring and promotion processes.
Okay, so we've covered personality, morals, EQ, and bias. The final piece of this knowing yourself puzzle is knowing what you actually want from your career. And this brings us to Edgar Schein's concept of career anchors.
This is such a useful framework, especially for people who feel stuck or unhappy at work and can't figure out why. Schein says we all have a dominant anchor, a core value or motive that we just will not give up. It's the thing that, if it's missing from our job, makes us miserable.
And the trap, the text says, is that organizations often ignore this. They assume everyone wants the same thing, which is to move up the ladder.
Exactly. The classic mistake is confusing the technical functional person with the general management person. Let's say you have a brilliant social worker. She loves the casework, she loves helping families, she loves being in the field. Her anchor is technical functional. She just loves the craft of social work. Or maybe her anchor is service dedication to a cause.
So because she's so good at the casework, the organization says, great job, we're promoting you to be the director of social services.
Right, we make her general manager. Now, instead of doing casework, she's managing budgets, handling HR disputes, and sitting in meetings about parking enforcement. And she hates it. She's completely miserable. And the organization has just lost a great social worker and gained a terrible manager.
Because the anchor for a general manager is different. They're the ones who love climbing the ladder, they love having responsibility, they love coordinating the work of others.
Precisely. And there are other anchors too. If your anchor is autonomy and independence, you need to do things your own way. You'd make a terrible rule follower, but you might be a great consultant or freelancer. If your anchor is security stability, you value tenure and knowing what tomorrow looks like. If this lifestyle you work to live, you don't live to work. You need that balance.
And it briefly mentions locus of control here too, which
Right.
feels related to all this.
It is. Briefly, this is just about how you view your own agency in the world. Do you have an internal locus of control, which is the belief that I control my own destiny, or an external one, which is the belief that the world just happens to me? The text notes that, at least in North American culture, an internal locus correlates with better stress management and better promotability. If you believe you can fix the problem, you're more likely to try.
So bringing this all together, we've built quite a toolkit today for self-management. We have the big five to understand our traits, career anchors to understand our drivers, EQ to manage our relationships, and the awareness of implicit bias to check our judgments.
It's a really comprehensive package, and the text wraps this all up with the concept of the reflective practitioner, a term from Donald Schoen. And it means you can't just listen to this deep dive and say, okay, cool, I'm self-aware now.
Right. It's not a one-and-done thing.
Not at all. You have to journal. You have to actively seek feedback from people you trust. You have to practice these skills. It's an active, ongoing process for your entire career.
And as a final, powerful cautionary tale of what happens when you don't do this work, when you have all the technical skills in the world but lack self-awareness, the text points us to the BP Deepwater Horizon disaster.
This is the ultimate case study in why all of this fluffy stuff actually matters. We all remember the oil spill in 2010. The CEO BP at the time was Tony Hayward. Now, Hayward was a geologist. He had a PhD. His technical skills were off the charts. He understood the rock formations under the Gulf of Mexico better than almost anyone.
He knew the rocks, but he didn't know the people.
That's it, exactly. When the rig exploded and 11 people died and the entire Gulf Coast was being destroyed, the public pressure was immense. And Hayward, in a moment of frustration during an interview, said this infamous line, "I would like my life back."
Ugh, I still cringe every single time I hear that quote.
It was a PR disaster of epic proportions because it showed a complete and total lack of empathy, a lack of social awareness, to use Goldman's term. He made this massive tragedy about his own personal inconvenience while families were mourning and fishermen were losing their entire livelihoods.
He was eventually replaced.
He was, by a man named Robert Dudley. And the contrast was stark. Dudley had grown up in Mississippi. He had swum in the Gulf as a kid. He had a personal connection to the coast that was being destroyed. And his entire communication style reflected that empathy. He had the EQ that Hayward so clearly lacked. And for BP, that lack of EQ in their top leader cost them billions in reputation damage.
It just drives the point home so powerfully. Soft skills have incredibly hard consequences. You can have the PhD, you can have the title, but if you don't know yourself and you can't read the room, you will fail.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive. We've unpacked a lot of theory, but it really does all come back to that person in the mirror.
It does.
So here's a final provocative thought for you to chew on as you head out. We talk about those self-imposed barriers to leadership, specifically the idea of relying on your title for authority. So ask yourself this. If you stripped away your job title, your corner office, and your technical skills today, would people still follow you? Or is your leadership relying on authority rather than the self-knowledge we talked about today?
That's the question.
Thanks for joining our study group. We'll see you in the next chapter.